Joining us now from Lifecore Biomedical is Darren Heber. He is the Senior Vice President for Corporate Development. Welcome, Darren.
Hi, Perry. Thanks for the opportunity. We really appreciate it. This is a first for Lifecore, and so with that, I think it dovetails with our question. Just simply, have you heard of Lifecore Biomedical before today? And I'm going to go into a little bit of history as to why potentially you haven't, but talk a little bit more about our obviously capacity and capabilities, and now that you'll know about us, hopefully learn a little bit more and see what we can do. So moving on now. I think to start out, what I wanted to do is maybe just a little bit of history. So Lifecore's been in business. We're going to celebrate our 60th year of business next year. Certainly the company has gone through some different iterations as far as products that were offered, as well as ownership, public to private and vice versa. But maybe more specifically looking at the regulated industry that we're talking about now. And that's we've been in that space for the better part of 40 years. And at least starting with our first FDA approvals around the hyaluronic acid that we make and ferment as a part of a product that we offer. Lifecore, for probably more current history, was a part of Landec Corporation, which is a food business, and obvious synergies, right? We all see why a food business should own a biomedical CDMO. Ultimately, there was thought to be some synergies with the HA that we produce and some packaging to be used for produce and fresh cut vegetables. That didn't come to fruition, but the board was savvy enough to understand what they had as far as our capabilities, capacity, and know-how in the building with our HA, and then as we got into the CDMO space specifically. So Landec Corporation owned us roughly 2010. And then as well, our board, again, looking at the overall business and recognized that certainly margins within the biomedical and biotech space were better than the food industry, and decided to divest all of the food businesses. And that happened in 2022. Landec ceased to exist, and Lifecore became the company, again, with all the food business gone. And now we're kind of jettisoned alone as a pure play CDMO. The ticker symbol changed on the NASDAQ exchange, and then Lifecore was on its way. Lifecore, we are a company in the Twin Cities, outside of Minneapolis, pretty easy to get to for folks that are looking to go to a CDMO, just a quick 20-minute ride west of the Twin Cities. We're part of the Medical Alley. It's a trade biotech medical trade association in the Twin Cities area as well. Medtronic, Boston Scientific are a part of that program, along with the Mayo Clinic, just south of the city. So the hub, if you will, of Minneapolis is pretty significant relative to the medical industry, and we're proud to be a part of that. Like I mentioned, from a quality and compliance and a regulated perspective, Lifecore has a little bit more than 40 years of experience in that regard. Again, primarily starting with our HA fermentation processes. That's where we received our first FDA approvals. And then through those products, moving into sterile fill finish, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. On the sterile fill finish side, we have more than 20 commercial products. And as others have noted, working with virtual pharma all the way to what we recognize and put on this slide with 3 of the top 10 pharma. So, you know, folks, again, a couple people in an antibody that need everything outsourced, along with global pharma are folks that we support. I think, you know, looking at what everybody has put together so far for presentations, and certainly knowing some of the companies that are coming up later this afternoon, it's really encouraging to see new additions from an equipment perspective. It's nice to see robust pieces of equipment going in our industry. I think it certainly signifies the health of the industry. What I like to say, I think with regard to Lifecore, and I think and I hope pharma companies would recognize this too, well-funded companies can buy any piece of equipment, but I think the people within your building and then also the quality systems are really kind of the priceless piece that differentiate all the different CDMOs that are out there. So we've got a multi-compendial quality management system. Again, it's been tested for the better part of 40 years on the API side, excipient side, with what we manufacture from an HA perspective. And then as we progressed into sterile filling, medical devices, biologic products, and drug combination products as well. So you really can bring anything device-wise, product-wise to our facility, and it's going to fit within our quality system and certain things that we've worked with in the past. We talk about quality and regulatory as lots of other folks are. We probably have anywhere between 75 to 95 audit days a year within our facilities, so between clients and then regulatory agencies. So certainly our system is tested robustly annually. So talking about the site, we're broken up into 3 locations. They're all within roughly 5 miles of one another. But it's still considered a campus from FDA or for FDA purposes. Total square footage, 248,000 square feet and roughly 450 employees. Our site 1 is our main location from a production perspective. That's where our HA processing and manufacturing fermentation is, our drug product filling. We also do analytical development, analytical testing, as well as assembly within that facility, all our micro labs, as well as warehousing and distribution are in that as well. Our site 2 is, again, within about 5 miles. It is a manufacturing site, but more downstream related. So we have cartoning capabilities there. We have redundant QC lab there, distribution as well. A little bit more, the redundant QC lab, a little bit more robust testing with our particulate lab. I think I mentioned all of our stability is done there as well. But yeah, that's a nice secondary facility. And again, we utilize it for a little bit more downstream capabilities. Our site 3 is a 140,000 square foot building that we occupy 20,000 square feet of. And that building is unique. It's owned by the same owner of the site 2 building that we're buying from. So we have a pretty good relationship with them. And really what we're looking at is our site 3 is potentially the future for Lifecore and where we would look for significant expansion. Now, I'm going to talk about one of the pieces of equipment that we're adding, but in the future, and say the next 3 to 5 years, this is where Lifecore would really look to add capacity, add lines, and potentially packaging, a little bit more robust packaging capabilities in a site like this. So again, good access to growth. I think the other thing that's nice about the area that we're in, being about 20 minutes outside of the cities, is that there's quite a bit of land available for growth too. So we're not in a location that has significantly high prices of real estate or is maybe landlocked from an expansion perspective. We've got a lot of opportunity in the area where we are. So next, looking at our capabilities, like others that we've talked about or that have presented, we can work on clinical and commercial, all the way upstream from a development perspective, as well as downstream and commercial manufacturing. Our value proposition centers around with a client defining the starting line because of what we have capability-wise in the building. And I think more importantly, probably the brain power with our employees, both from a production perspective, but certainly within the scientific aspects of what we work on. We tell the clients that they can define the starting line, meaning that we can work on things farther upstream as well as commercial. We can work on formulation development and optimization, analytical development and testing, like I mentioned, stability. We also do packaging and have packaging engineers on site. and then as well engineering and design support for packaging too. So again, soup to nuts as it relates to CDMO capabilities within and under roof. Looking at some of the things that we've worked on, again, folks maybe don't know as much about Lifecore, like I mentioned earlier, because we've really stayed in a space, or maybe not stayed in, but at least have started in a space that's more related to ophthalmic viscoelastic devices or syringe filling that's related to the HA that we ferment. Three of our top 5 clients are in the ophthalmic space, and we fill ophthalmic viscoelastic devices, which are syringes filled with HA for the better part. We accessorize those syringes with labels, plunger rods, finger flange extenders, put them in trays, seal them with a Tyvek lid. We ship those out for ETO sterilization. They come back and we carton them, like I mentioned, in our site too, with downstream work. So we've really started in a space that's more in the HA or hydrogels, different things that are maybe more polymer related, but certainly highly viscous. I think one of the areas where Lifecore, at least initially, has been niched, if you will, from a filling standpoint, is Lifecore is the group that can handle things that are highly viscous. And folks are absolutely right, we can. What we're looking to do is expand the aperture, if you will, of different things that we work on. Our quality system can certainly handle it, and with the background of the different folks that we have in the building, we can work on them too. Maybe just a word about viscosity. We routinely fill in the millions of units syringes that are in the 20,000 to 40,000 centipoise range. So we can work on things that a lot of other folks can't. Complex formulations as a part of those are something that we work on daily. On the right-hand side of this side, you can see from a sterile filtration capability, we have the ability to, it's proprietary technology within our site, but can sterile filter up to 100,000 centipoise. So pretty significant and pretty thick material that we can work with aseptically. And then, like I mentioned, what we're interested in doing is working on biologics and GLP-1s and mRNA programs. We're fielding opportunities in all those different areas, looking to maybe fill things that aren't thick like honey and more water-like with the capabilities that we have. But certainly that wide range of viscosities from water-like all the way up to thousands of centipoise are things that we can work with. So what one of the big things that we wanted to highlight with this meeting today in this presentation opportunity, and we've been talking about it for a couple of years. I've been with Lifecore for 3, and it had been on order since I got there. It's in our building and it's GMP ready now, but this checks a box for Lifecore as it relates to isolator containment. But we're proud to announce and put on the market our 5-headed Groninger filler with scan isolator. This machine has a flexibility of running vials, cartridges, and syringes. All of our machines, and we'll get into it into the next slide as well, but all of our machines use ready-to-use componentry. So, but this is really related to isolator technology and the speed of a 5-head filler, a Swiss Army knife, and all that it can handle. It also has dual filling mechanisms, so you can work in complete disposable situations via peristaltic pump, as well as dedicated parts with rotary piston capabilities. And like folks before me that had talked about some of the highlights with machinery, this machine as well has really low line loss. So for again, for us to get into the antibody space, if you will, or other high value type APIs, it's really a nice machine for that because it limits line loss and you have the ability to get as much as you can from a units perspective out of a batch. Again, we're excited to talk about this. This has a couple of programs that are designated to be put on it right away, but again, depending on batch sizes and viscosities and speed, it adds roughly 25 million units of capacity to our site. So quite a bit that we're excited to put on the market. Our other lines are about 20 to 25 million units of capacity. This would be theoretically if we're in a full 24/7 operation. We essentially run a 24/5. But we have a single-headed Flexicon filler that can fill 2 ml up to 100 ml vials. It's a peristaltic pump capability. And actually, even within the small scale that it is, we have filled commercial product on this line. We have an Optima filler that's a 5-head, and it is a flexible machine. We currently have it qualified right now for vials from 2R to 20R. Later this year and into early next, we're looking at adding the syringe and qualifying the syringe capability on this line, which again is going to give us some more flexibility as it relates to syringes. This is rotary piston pump technology. And then we have 2 legacy fillers. They're Innova syringe fillers, 5-headed fillers that can work in 0.5 ml up to 10 ml syringes, again, rotary pump. Filling technologies. The one thing that I would like to add with these, they're legacy machines, but what it did is these are the machines that we got into as we started filling syringes, again, utilizing and stepping forward and further downstream from our HA fermentation processes into what we work with syringes. The first of these machines that we got was one of the first in the United States to not only do vacuum stopping, but also vacuum filling. So we can cut down to a 0 bubble within filling a syringe, which is needed as we service a lot of the ophthalmic area. So looking at why to choose Lifecore, we put a quote here. This is Deborah Blitterfield from Lindy Biosciences. It's a client of ours that's developing a process to be able to work with highly concentrated mAbs. But I think this is, like I mentioned earlier, well-funded groups can buy any kind of equipment, but it's the people in the building that make a difference. And I think that's the highlight of Lifecore, along with our quality system, is that we have folks that aren't just going to listen exactly to what needs to be, well, I shouldn't say it that way. I guess what we look to do is work in collaboration with the client to find optimal processes for the products that they're working on, and in particular, a program like this one where there's some development work that needs to be done with that. Our group has the expertise and technology in their background to be able to provide solutions for clients. So with that, I'd like to say thanks to Perry, and I would open it up for any questions.
Thank you, Darren. Thanks. Great presentation, and thanks for bringing Lifecore to this event. This is really interesting. You mentioned you work with very small pharma and very large pharma. So how are you organized to help, I think what you described as 2 people in an antibody? How are you organized to help them?
Yeah, I think what you have is dedicated resources regardless, right? So within our facility, if you bring a project to us, you have a dedicated project manager regardless of size, right? And we'll dedicate team to that individual program based on the need and complexity. So, again, I think we value the program regardless and our ability to be able to support their patients. And regardless of the size of the pharma company, we take the responsibility to advance those molecules and the therapeutics the same, regardless of the size of the company. So we dedicate the equipment and the people that are needed to advance it.
We have an audience question. I'm not sure how hard this might be to answer or what this list would look like. What type of APIs can you formulate into hydrogels and microparticles?
That's a great question, Harry. I'm not the scientist, so I'm happy to follow up with that one. Not to misspeak or to be able to get that person in front of our experts to answer that question. So not to punt, but I think I will, and I'll follow up with appropriate experts.
Okay. So you mentioned highly viscous drug substance and drugs and just complex formulations. Can you talk a little bit more about that expertise you have and why you like to lean into those?
Yeah, well, I think, just anecdotally, we've worked with things, when you're working with things that are highly viscous and substances that are highly viscous, one of the major portions of what we work with pretty significantly is just mixing solutions. Being able to get homogeneous mixtures with things that are highly viscous are certainly very difficult. So we've worked with different kind of mixers, different types of mixing technologies through testing on really super viscous type programs. So I think that's probably one of the the aspects of expertise that we have is to create those homogeneous mixtures so that they are injectable, either devices or medications. So again, it's years worth of technology and know-how within our process development group that supports those activities.
Great, thanks. I greatly admire folks that love challenges and seek them out. So great. Darren Heber from Lifecore Biomedical, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Perry.